this commit, we replace a stub with a real Xcode project. Up to now, iOSapp.xcode fbxproject in this repository was a 1.2 kilobyte placeholder file, literally a comment block explaining that writing a valid pbx project is error-prone, and that Xcode would regenerate it later. The problem is Xcode would regenerate it later. There was no pbx project object in there, so any attempt to build for the simulator failed immediately. Commit C453F7 fixes that by generating a real project, pbxproj from a checked-in manifest, iOS app project.emailer using a tool called xcodegen. Along the way, 4 separate integration bugs surfaced while actually getting the app to launch. And we are going to walk through every one of them with the real diff. Here is the actual before state, straight from git show on commit C433F7. The old project bow at ZLR project, it says so explicitly in its own comments. It is an intentional placeholder that documents the plan, run a setup script, follow 7 manual steps in iOS app readme.mid to create a fresh Xcode project through the GUI and track the real fix in next in steps on that item P0. That workflow is fragile. It depends on a human clicking through Xcode's new project wizard correctly every time. The fix in this commit removes that manual step entirely. Project.giml becomes the single source of truth, and xcodegen generate deterministically produces the same pbxproj every time, no GUI required. Here is the real iOS app project.yml. It declares one target iOS app of type application on platform iOS, and the settings base 2 build settings matter most for this integration. Frami.work search path.hs points at Compose app build Xcode frameworks configuration. SDK name. That is exactly the directory where the Kotlin Multiplatform Gradle task embed and sign Apple framework for Xcode writes the compiled Compose app top framework, other LST flags, adds framework Compose app top blows app, and links SQLDelight 3, which we will unpack in a moment. And enable user script sandboxing is explicitly set to no, because the Gradle pre-built script needs to write files outside the sandbox Xcode normally confined script phases to. Every one of these settings previously had to be typed by hand into Xcode's build settings UI. Now it is 3 lines of YAML, checked into Git and reviewable in a pull request. The pre-built scripts section in project.yml defines a run script phase named compile Kotlin framework. It changes into the repo root and then does something that looks unusual for a build script. It checks whether Java Other Home is already set, and if not, searches 2 candidate paths for the Android Studio JBR, the bundled Java runtime, and exports Java Home to whichever one exists. Only then does it call Gradle, embed and sign Apple framework for Xcode. The reason this exists is a real bug encountered while bringing the app up. Xcode script phases run with a minimal, scrubbed path environment. Without pinning Java Home explicitly, Gradle could resolve a different JDK than the one that had written the Kotlin incremental build caches, and the symptom was a cryptic Gradle error. Don't know how to deserialize a snapshot with type tag. Pinning Java Home here makes the Xcode build use the same JDK every time. The second integration fix leaves in other flags -l SQLDelight 3 appended after framework Compose app. Compose app, the framework, the compiled Kotlin Multiplatform output is built as a static framework rather than dynamic. SQLDelight's native driver, the library this project uses for the local SQLDelight cache, binds directly to the system SQLDelight 3C library on iOS. When you link a static framework, the linker does not automatically pull in that framework's own transitive C library dependencies the way a dynamic framework would. So without explicitly linking SQLDelight 3 in the app target itself, the build would fail at the link step with unresolved symbols, not at runtime, which makes it easy to misdiagnose as a Gradle or Kotlin problem when it is actually a plain Xcode linker flag. Info.plist gets one new key in this commit. Cadizable, minimum frame duration on phone, set to true. The comment right above it in the real diff explains why. Compose Multiplatform ships a startup check called plist sanity check, and if this key is missing, the app aborts immediately at launch rather than rendering anything. This key opts the app out of a frame duration cap that iOS applies by default on high refresh rate iPhone displays. Compose Multiplatform requires apps to make that opt-out decision explicitly rather than silently assuming a default. It is a 4-line addition to a plist file. But skip it, and you get a black screen and an immediate crash the moment the process starts, before a single Compose frame renders. iOS app.swift, the app's @main entry point, used to call QueenIOS.init QueenIOS to bootstrap the Queen dependency injection graph shared with Android and desktop. That call was wrong, and it is fixed in this commit to QueenIOS.init QueenIOS. The reason is specific to how Kotlin native exports functions to Objective-C and Swift. Any Kotlin function whose name starts with init gets automatically prefixed with do in the generated export because init is a reserved initializer family name in Objective-C's naming conventions. The compiler assumes you meant an actual object initializer, not a regular function. So init Koinios in the shared Kotlin code becomes doinit Koinios on the Swift side. Get this wrong, and Xcode reports a straightforward unresolved symbol at compile time, an easy one to fix once you know the rule. With project YAML regenerating a real PBX proj and all 4 fixes in place, here is the actual verification command from the updated iOSApp README. Xcode build -project iosap.xcodebase -scheme iosap.x-platform equals iOS simulator command name equals iPhone 17 with code signing disabled and only active arch enabled for a faster single architecture build. This is not a claim taken on faith. The commit message documents that this exact invocation printed build succeed against iOS 26.2.2 using a developer this workaround for a command line tool's Xcode select misconfiguration on the build machine. The app then installed, launched, and rendered the overview dashboard with live Eurostat data pulled over the network. That is a materially stronger claim than the previous changelog entry, which the commit explicitly corrects. An earlier exit 0 was actually a pipe exit code artifact, not a real green build. To recap commit C 453F7. The Stub project PBX Pro is gone, replaced by a real project generated from the checked-in iOSApp project.wim. Regenerate it anytime with xcodegen. Regenerate it anytime with xcodegen generate. 4 integration fixes made the generated project actually work. Java a home, pinned in the Gradle pre-build phase. -L SQLDelight 3 added to link the static Kotlin framework SQLDelight dependency. Cadizable minimum frame duration on phone added to info.platform's startup check, and the Swift call corrected to doinit Koinos to match Kotlin/native's Objective-C export naming. The iOSApp README was rewritten around this xcodegen workflow. If you want to see this exact state of the repository, run git checkouts 453if7 and open iOSapto.xcode yourself. Subscribe for more Kotlin Multiplatform build episodes.